Welcome to the Triple RS podcast with me, Ashna Taktani. Here to let you know that no matter what you face in life, you are not alone. We do this through a safe, judgment-free community where we share relatable stories for relatable students from relatable scenes. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Triple XRS podcast with me, Ashna Taktani. Today we have got an incredible guest, and I think this guest, by far will be the most fun and probably the most relatable guest for all of you. So please help me in welcoming a bilingual presenter. He is both British and Jordanian, an incredible MC and voiceover artist. Seriously, you have to visit his Instagram and TikTok sometimes. He's just got the best content. He's been in Dubai working as the breakfast show host on the radio station Channel 4, and he's been in the media industry for 10 years. He's a huge fan of superheroes, anime, sci-fi, fantasy, and video games. In fact, he has even hosted Comic-Con alongside the World Government Summit. He's hosted several events for Audi, the Jazz Festival, and like I said, he is one of the greatest radio presenters in the region. Please give a huge virtual round of applause for none other than Ferris.
Ashna, hi.
Hi, how are you?
I am great. I'm outstanding. What an introduction. I'm embarrassed now.
Oh, no, don't be. I actually forgot to mention one thing. Ferris is also an incredible TV presenter. He did the entirety of Expo 2020, one of the greatest reporters there. I learned so much from him during that time. I think we did, remember we had the UAE National Day and it was like a live coverage? How many hours was it? It was a long day.
It was a long day. It was at least 8 hours. Might have been even longer. But, I mean, you, with all the crowds that were there that day, it was absolutely jam-packed. And you were basically in the care of me with all these crowds.
I learned so much. I remember, I think my favorite segment that day was when we went to the restaurant in the Aleph Pavilion and we were trying like the pistachio ice cream. That was probably the best part. And he is also a TV presenter for DXB today. I saw your reel. You were dancing with Bassem? Wow.
Yeah, I was dancing with Bassem Youssef.
That's incredible.
Absolutely. The TikTok was his idea. And I think because he's going to be in the UAE, he's going to be in Abu Dhabi on the 24th of May 2024, whenever you're watching or listening to this podcast. And he wants to do it with all of his crowds in his European tour. So I think that was a little teaser. I mean, I just checked it. It's got like 6 million views. It's crazy.
It was hilarious, too. I was like showing my mom and my dad. I was like, look, that's Ferris. Wow. It's just some incredible things you've done in your career. Speaking of, you are a radio show host for the breakfast show on Channel 4. And, having done that for a couple of years myself, things are always so unexpected. There's so much uncertainty. It's really fun. So can you share a funny story? By the way, guys, this is our story time for the day. I thought we'd switch it up and do something different. So can you share a funny story from your radio days, when things go hilariously wrong? Any instance that comes to mind?
I mean, I love chaos. I'm trying to think of some stories that I can say on a PG podcast. But I can talk about when things went wrong. Like, luckily, I didn't say anything bad. But, in the radio station, you turn the microphone on, you talk, you turn the microphone off, and then you say things to your co-host behind other people's back. Well, on this occasion, we'd left the microphone open. But and then we started getting messages on the WhatsApp saying, we can still hear you. We can hear you over the music. Now, the good news is, no bad words were used. And we didn't actually get to the point where we said anything bad about anyone. We were arguing with each other. We were complaining because somebody took somebody's food out of the fridge.
Oh, okay, thank God.
And getting quite passionate about it. But it's just one of those moments where it's like, we have to be careful about what we say in general in this room because you can forget a microphone open sometimes.
Yeah. That is hilarious. I was going through, now I do a bit of like stalker research thing for all of my guests. I find it crazy. My skills, I didn't even know I had them in me. But anyways, I was going through your Instagram highlights, and I saw that you did a lot of Nerf wars previously on Love Radio. What was the story behind that?
When I first came to Dubai, I was 24, and I think I was a lot sillier. I was just silly, and I liked making that kind of content. So I had a Nerf gun, and I brought it to work. That's the type of guy I was. and I just start shooting people with it. One day, I bring two Nerf guns, give it to my co-host, and we go and bust into another radio station. Turns out they had a Nerf gun in there, so they started
Oh,
retaliating. And then before you knew it, everyone at the
wow.
station had Nerf guns, and you never knew when the next Nerf bullet was coming from.
So you're a
And that's what's fun
troublemaker.
about creative places, creative industries like radio stations, TV stations. Definitely more radio stations is, even though it's like slacking off, it's being silly with that kind of thing. It actually helps the creative juices flow, and it's content for the radio as well.
It is. Very funny content too. It was hilarious. I couldn't stop watching them yesterday. So you've had quite the shift, quite the career shift. From Jordanian radio was where you started off. That also was quite unexpected, actually. Would you want to walk us through the story of how you found out that you wanted to be a radio presenter? Because I think that's quite unique.
Oh, right from the start. I started doing radio when I was 18 years old. I just started university and I wanted a job. I wanted to make my own money. And I tried different things. I tried to become a part time employee at a bookstore. I worked as a barista for about a week. And I watched a movie called Pirate Radio. You might want to check the PG rating on that. It's also called The Boat That Rocked. And it was about in the 1960s, 1970s, rock and pop music was illegal in the United Kingdom. You weren't allowed to play it in the United Kingdom. So what people used to do is they used to take ships, massive boats or oil rigs, 2 miles into the water, so that they're technically in international waters. They're not within British territory, and they would broadcast music inside to the UK, so the people in the UK could listen to it. So that was a loophole around those laws. So it's a film, a comedy movie about those people, and it was really the golden age of radio. And I watched it, and I was thinking, I want to do that. I can do that. So I messaged a radio presenter who worked in Amman. His name's Rob Stevens. He's in Egypt now. And I said, are there any jobs at the station? Any jobs whatsoever? And he said, we're always looking for cover presenters. So a cover presenter only works when one of the regular presenters goes on holiday, is sick, whatever. If they need somebody, I'm who they'd call. So I did that for a few months. And then one of the presenters went on her honeymoon, and I came in to cover for her for 2 weeks. And unfortunately for her, when she came back, she didn't have her job. They gave it to me.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow, because you're just that good. There was just something in that movie, I guess, that.
Yeah. It was, well, that's the idea is if you think you want to try something, try.
Yeah, we spoke about that yesterday, and we're gonna come back to it pretty soon. You had quite the career shift, like I said, from Jordanian radio to now Dubai's multifaceted media scenes, right? So, did you always know this path was for you? Like, sometime in the middle, did you ever think, "What am I doing? Like, is this for me?" Did you ever doubt that?
I didn't plan to come to Dubai in the first place. I had no plans to come to Dubai. I think I'd thought about it because it was my dream to do radio in the UK, and I ideally would have wanted to go straight from Jordan to the UK. But I was like, maybe Dubai is a good stepping stone, a good stepping point to get over there. But the actual way I got the job was I had a show near the end of my, like 5 years in. I had a show with a guy called Tim, an American guy, much older, and he applied for a job in Dubai for a radio position, and he applied for both of us without telling me. So I actually didn't know there was a job until I actually had an offer letter, and that's when I came
Wow.
over.
And were you scared when you? Because obviously it's a big shift, right? So how did you feel about that? How did you deal with it?
I mean, I was very excited, but at this stage, because I was, and we can get more into this a little bit later, but I was very anxious and had low self-esteem when I was younger. So I was already learning through my work in radio that that's something that can be ignored, and like trying new things actually is a good thing. So I was nervous and I was sad because, I love my country. I love Jordan. And it was a whole different thing. I was going to leave all my friends and my family, but I was excited at the same time. Like I knew it was a huge opportunity.
Right. And obviously, we can see how that's impacted you, how that's helped you later on. You said that you suffered with severe anxiety and low self esteem when you were a kid. How did you deal with that? And did that ever impact you professionally?
It definitely impacted me professionally. It impacted me. Well, luckily, I started so young. I started working when I was 18, so it hasn't. I don't think I let it be a big enough of a problem. I think, and I'm not saying you should get validation from external sources, but if I'm going to think back, I think I went to visit my older brother when I was 18 as well, 18, and he was living in America. So it was the first time I'd gone on a trip by myself without my parents, and I went into this American college environment with all these new people who were like older and cooler and American and all that stuff. And they thought I was awesome. They thought I was cool. It was different to the people I was normally around that made me feel like that I should be awkward, I should be shy. So I think that gave me a little boost of confidence, as well as then I started radio shortly after that, and people listened to it, and people liked it. So that gave me more confidence. So basically, I still feel anxious to this day, and have low self-esteem to this day. But what's gotten me this far is to ignore those feelings. It doesn't mean you have to stop feeling them, just ignore them.
And how do you do that?
Just assume it's going to go well. Just assume it's going to be fine. If there's a voice in your head telling you that you're not good enough, or you're not good looking enough, or you're not talented enough, be like, maybe that's true, but let me assume that's not the case. Let's pretend that's not the case and treat it as if it's not going to be the case. And it's probably going to go a lot better than if I'm assuming that I'm bad. And I especially don't like it when people don't go for the opportunity entirely because of that feeling.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that right now. I asked you a question in our earlier conversation, and I said, if you could give any advice to your teenage self, what would that be?
It would be, I mean, I don't want to use a cliche, but you do actually miss 100% of the shots you don't take, because I don't want to come on here or anywhere else and be like, just go for it. You're going to be amazing, because maybe you're not going to be amazing. Maybe you are going to suck. You can't be good at everything that you try. Even if you really, really want to do it, you can't be good at everything. So I'm not saying you are good enough. Maybe you're not. But why should you tell yourself you're not good enough? If you're not going to be supporting yourself, if you're not going to back yourself, then how are you going to succeed? So for me, if an audition comes up and I'm like, oh, I'm not right for this, I need to not say that I'm not right for this. I'm going to go to the audition, and I'm going to get someone whose job it is to tell me I'm not good enough for it, to tell me I'm not good enough for it. And that almost held me back from being a TV presenter, even though I was well into my career at this point. I got recommended for Studio Expo at Expo City, and I missed the audition twice. And I was like, it's because I'm lazy. I missed it. I'm lazy. I'm careless. But I think part of it was low self-esteem. And it wasn't like I was too scared. Like, I don't want you to imagine a depressed Ferris like, I'm not good enough. I'm not good looking enough. I'm not talented enough. Oh, I can't go. It wasn't that. It was more of a, well, I need to go to the place, park, go do an audition for an hour, probably wait in a waiting room just for them to say no. See, in my mind, like, I'd already assumed it was going to be a no. Luckily, I did finally go for the audition, and I did become one of the presenters on Studio Expo. And based on that, I'm now one of the presenters on DXB Today on Dubai One. So don't decide that you're not going to get the job. There's somebody else who's going to decide that for you.
My mom has a saying, do your best, leave the rest. And it's exactly what you did. The second that you assume that it's going to go wrong, we start making those excuses in our head. Like, oh, it's going to take so long. I'm going to have to park. I'm going to have to get ready. It's going to, it's such a long drive from here. But those are just excuses to shield us from, I think, what we think is that pain of rejection, of not being good enough. But you're right. There's so many things, but I think the two main things are just do your best. If you're not good enough, it's fine. They will tell you. And not that you should focus on external validations, but at least that way you have to work on it before you can start imagining things that, I'm going to be the next pop star.
It takes the question away. It takes the question away. And if you're really passionate about it, try again. I'm not saying that if one producer says you're not good enough, you should stop. We have a presenter on DXB Today called Dina Butty, who tried for many years to be a presenter, and people kept not giving her jobs, and they kept, I don't know if they told her she wasn't good enough, but she did struggle to get the jobs. But she kept at it because she knew she wanted to do it. And now she is one of the presenters on DXB Today as well. She has a very successful Instagram page, very beautiful house, beautiful family. So she didn't let that stop her. But imagine if she also assumed that she wasn't good enough. When other people didn't give her the jobs, she could have been disheartened very quickly.
And I can't imagine Expo. I can't imagine DXB Today. I can't imagine Dubai's just media and TV industry without her. She's such an energetic personality, and It's just the fact that, you have to keep going at it, and it's something that we've seen from both yours
And
and her
you should try and
experience.
think about it this way as well. We're specifically talking about like auditions or public speaking, but it could be for like job interviews. It could be for talking to someone on the playground that you have a crush on. Like it could be so many different things. But what you need to do in your brain is stop seeing it as an enemy. I think people see an audition as an enemy. I think they see an interview as an enemy. I think they see the crowd watching you at a public speaking event as the enemy. And you are scared that the enemy's going to beat you and they're going to win unless you've got your A game. Instead, make a deal with the interviewee, with the person on the playground you have a crush on, with the crowd, that things are going to go well. They assume it's going to go well. Whoever's auditioning you wants it to go well. They want good people. If you also want it to go well and you assume it's going to go well, if you make that connection as soon as you walk in, like this is going to go well and we both want it to, it becomes a lot less. It doesn't trigger your flight or fright reflexes that make you like want to run and hide.
Yeah. And I think that's incredible advice, so if you're listening to this and you've got a big audition coming up, or, you've got some public speaking competition. I get a lot of these kind of comments coming in again and again saying that, what do I do? I feel really, really scared. Then I think this advice, you've just put it the best way possible. Plain and simple, it's not your enemy. You're making all of that up in your mind. Just give it a chance. If you assume things are going to go well, that's already such a huge step to making them go well. And it's almost a form of manifestation or visualization, if you will. If you can see it go well, then really 9 out of 10 times it is going to go well.
I'll give you a
Now,
physical example of the same mentality. I recently got an opportunity to film with DXB today at Ignite Watersports, and they have e-foils. If you don't know what an e-foil is, it's like a surfboard, it's electronic, and it rises up out of the water. They explained to me how it works. I'd never surfed before. I haven't really skateboarded. I don't do a lot of water sports, but it's something that you have to try by yourself. You can't have someone else on the board with you. So I remembered what he said. I remembered my training, and I just assumed it was going to go well. There's a chance I'm going to fall in. There's a chance it could hurt. There's a chance that the thing could hit me. But I was like, you know what? It's going to go well. I'm going to stand up, and I'm going to be able to ride this thing the first time. And I'm not saying this is going to happen every time, but yes, I stood up, and I rode an e-foil the very first time standing on it for 3 seconds, and then I fell in. But
the 3 seconds.
I knew that I could do it. I knew that I was able to stand on it from the first time. So then I got up again. So that means even when it comes to anything, assume it's going to go well, and it will for maybe a few seconds. But if you know you can do it because you actually tried, that's going to help you realize that, yes, you can actually do it consistently and you can get better at it and you can get more experience.
Exactly. Next time you try, the 3 seconds will turn to 6, and then you keep going at it, and it'll become half a minute. Let's hope. We're being optimistic. Now, here's another side of looking at it, right? And it's probably a question I know by now a lot of the listeners are asking themselves. Now, I don't usually ask these kind of questions. I'm kind of the optimist, always positive kind of thinker. So these kind of thoughts don't enter my head, but I know it's very much possible, right? How do you deal with situations that don't always go as planned, even when you have assumed the best, right? Let's say that audition, you assumed the best, but something ended up happening and it just doesn't go your way. What do you do in those kind of situations, or what would you advise our listeners to do?
I personally let go of things really, really quickly, which it's a skill. It's not easy to do. I know it's easier said than done. Some people, they'll really internalize the failure or rejection. It'll mess up their whole day. And I'm not saying I do it every time, but I'm a person who, if something goes wrong, I'm very quickly to be like, well, it's in the past. It happened. Like, why would I be upset about it now? It might be because I'm on the radio, and a lot of people give a lot of pressure to what's coming next time you talk on the radio, especially when you're very new. You're like, oh, I don't want to mess up. I don't want to mess up. Once you have messed up, it's like, well, I already messed up. I'm not messing up right now. It already happened. So you might have a really bad audition. It doesn't go well. You might have a really bad encounter with somebody. It doesn't go well. Well, it's like, well, it happened. I'm not. A good sentence to remember is, I'm not dead. If that's the most extreme thing that can happen to you is dying, and you're not that, it should be fine. You're not dead. You're not maimed. You're not injured. Nothing happened. If you think about it, nothing happened. It didn't go well. You missed out on one opportunity. You missed out on one thing you wanted to do. It doesn't mean all the billions and trillions of things out there have disappeared. It means you failed this one time. You can learn from it. What mistakes did you make? And move on to the next one.
That is so true. And I love that sentence. I'm going to start using it a lot more. At least I'm not dead. You know, I failed my
Did you
experience.
die? You didn't die.
Exactly. Because it's true. I mean, it's not just always with like opportunities saying this. Academic validation is my whole life. And I know there's some people who are out there and like, oh my God, what's she on about? But I know majority of the people will be like, yes, I totally understand. And this year, obviously, it's my first year in high school. And as an IB student, things are extremely different. Kind of hard as well until you get the hang of it, right? And history was one such subject for me. I got, for the first time ever, it's out of 8, I got a 4. When I tell you my report card is all 7s and 8s, I cried 2 days straight. And then obviously I got a few bad grades after that, and my dad's kind of the same way. He's got the same motto. He's like, well, you're not dead, right?
You didn't die.
Right. I got a 4, but I didn't die. So, and also the other thing he said, and this is really important, you said it as well. If you fail once, learn from those mistakes and then move on. In a lot of things, especially like radio situations when there are senses of urgency, you can't keep focusing on the past too much, or else the one mistake you made is going to turn into 2, is going to turn into 3, because you're not focused on the present. You're not thinking about what has to come next. You're stuck in the past. Fail is first attempt in learning. Remember that. So you made a mistake. So what? You're not dead. But what you can do is learn from it and move on. So that mindset is incredibly important. Great advice there.
I'll tell you about my first time on live TV. It was on Dubai One. It was my very first time. So I was at Expo 2020. I had the microphone. I was out. Okay, let's go over to Faris in the field. Faris, what's it looking like out there? I have a little earpiece. And I'm like, thank you, Lee. And I'm talking and I'm nervous. And you can tell I'm nervous. I'm very rigid. I want to stay within the camera frame. I don't know where's my head. If I move too much, am I out of frame? And you can tell like I'm a little bit nervous. While I'm talking, my earpiece falls out. So I didn't know what to do. In that I was terrified. Like my heart dropped. My earpiece fell out. I'm on live TV. Oh no. And I just stood there like a deer in the headlights, not knowing what's happening, not knowing how stupid I look. I just stood there. Now, what did happen is the earpiece fell out. The guys on the other side noticed that I couldn't hear them, and they said, oh, I guess Faris can't hear us. Let's move on to the next bit of the show. Nobody died. I was fine. I kept my job. It was one mistake. And in future, I learned to really stick the earpiece in. And second of all, what would have been fine, like you're watching live TV, is if it fell out of my ear and I was like, whoop, sorry, I dropped my earpiece and went and picked it up. I could have done that. It's fine. Maybe it's not perfect, but you shouldn't try and be a perfectionist when it comes to anything, especially when it comes to media, especially when it comes to live media.
That is so important. You just reminded me, oh my God, the kind of flashbacks I'm getting now, that something very similar happened, except I was walking back. So I almost hit something in the back. So thank God for the cameraman, because he was like guiding me where to go. And then I've had so many instances of my earpiece falling out. I've got trauma, like PTSD with AirPods. I can't trust my AirPods anymore. Being a perfectionist sometimes is what gets us. Now, how do you think now, if you can just do a quick comparison between how you used to be and how you are now? How have these values or this kind of mindset, how has that shifted your life personally as well as professionally?
To be honest, professionally, my first ever radio boss sent me one of my very first radio links to my email, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is from like 11 years ago. What's it going to sound like? And I listened to it, and guess how it sounded, Ashna.
I'm gonna say it was better than you expected.
It was the same. It was exactly the same. I was very surprised. My voice. I was 18, but my voice was exactly the same. My cadence was exactly the same. It was exactly the same. So I think professionally wise, I'm very similar, especially when it comes to radio, to when I started. I actually think I'm worse now. I think when I was younger, like I have more experience with like the buttons and, getting through my sentences and stuff like that. But the creativity, I think, was a lot. Yeah. And the excitement was a lot more there when I was younger. So Like I remembered
Very
it was
nice.
so exciting, and I felt really connected to the audience, and I still do. But sometimes you forget it, especially when in an industry like the media. By the way, if you're thinking about getting into media, horrible people work in media. They're always comparing each other to everyone else. There's a lot of egos. There's a lot of fakery. There's a lot of two-facedness. I've been very lucky with the people I work with directly, especially like the people on DXB today at Studio Expo, at my radio station, but I see it around. And it can be a very stressful industry. And that can bring down the creative flow. But I think confidence is everything. Confidence is so important, but not arrogance. So I think when confidence goes too far, it becomes arrogance. But when you're confident, as in, I am good at what I do, I'm right for the part, or I'm right for this job, and I'm just convinced of that, that's going to take you so much further. And that's how I am now. So in the past, I knew I was good at radio, but if somebody said, come and be on TV, I was like, oh, no, I don't know how to do TV. Like, I'm not going to be good at TV. Or someone was like, come and do a voiceover. I'd be like, oh, I've never done voiceovers before. I can't do it. Come and act in a movie. Oh, I can't do acting. Now it's like any opportunity comes along that I think might be fun or might be a new thing to try. I'm like, yep, I'll do it. I'll try. Worst thing that can happen is I can fail, which if I don't even try and do it anyway, then I've also failed. So it's the same outcome. So one way is a 100% fail outcome. The other one is a percentage that I might succeed. If this were stocks, if this were investments, you would go for the one where there's a chance that you'll win. So I'm more like that now than I used to be.
I love how the tone of the episode just up here, and you dealing with your anxiety and self-esteem, and it just went down there. It was like, don't ever get into media, they're bad people. No, but you're right. I don't think we should, and this is exactly the whole point of this episode. Don't try things because you're too scared that you're gonna fail, right? So whatever industry it is that you're comfortable in, I'm just gonna make this a little bit happier, uplift the tone a little bit. It's okay if you want to try things. The media industry isn't all that bad, guys. But as Farah said, there are certain things you have to keep in mind no matter what industry you're in. And one of the main things is confidence, not arrogance. Just because you're scared of, of like, I don't want to be arrogant or I don't want to be seen as arrogant, doesn't mean you have to constantly doubt yourself. All right, because there are enough critics out there in the world as it is, so you have to be your number one supporter. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to stay humble or you're going to think you're better than everybody else out there. You think you're good, you think you can do this, that is all you need. Just there, remember, there's a very fine line between confidence and arrogance. So just as long as you don't overstep that, you'll be fine. And for those of you who are wondering how to get into the media industry, it's okay, guys. It's fine. You'll be fine. It's
I
okay.
will, I will, I will bring you up when I say there's some horrible people. Yes, there are a lot of egos running around. It can be a little bit of a nitpicky industry. A lot of people talking about other people, a lot of gossip. But what's beautiful about it is if you remain grounded and true to yourself, if yourself is a genuine person, and stay genuine, and keep those connections that you had before, your friends, your family, and that's what I mean by staying grounded, then it's fine. It won't affect you at all. I've been here for 6 years, and I'm very similar to who I was back home, in Jordan, making no money. And that was a conscious effort. A big part of it was a conscious effort because I didn't want to fall into that trap of being obsessed with these superficial things. And you can be the same. And not only that, audiences will respond to you for it because most audiences, especially when it comes to radio, are average people on the way to work. It's people watching. And if you remain grounded, they will relate to that. And you're going to make so many friends and you're going to meet people in the industry who are genuine as well. And you're going to block out those other people. So don't worry about it. It's a good industry to get into, but be warned that there are some traps.
As is with, I think, every other industry out there, everything in this world. Now, we've got one last question before we move on to something new that we're trying for the first time on the Triple XRS podcast, and that is our rapid fire round. So, just one last question before that. Now, we're talking about, assuming the best. I'm assuming now that there were times when you did not always assume the best. So, here's a question. Has there ever been a time when assuming the worst actually worked in your favor? Maybe a hilarious case of over preparedness?
A time where I assumed the worst had worked in my favor. Not really. So you mentioned preparedness.
Yeah.
Different people prep for shows differently. Some people, they want to feel very prepared. They want to have everything down on a piece of paper. They want to have a call a day in advance of the podcast. They want to send in the questions ahead of time.
It's a very specific description.
Yeah, and that really works for some people, like it does for Ashna. I'm the type, and it comes off to some people as like lazy, like our Pharisee never prepares. I have tried the preparation thing before, and I find myself getting too worked up in the questions I'd prepared or the flow that I imagined was going to happen that it messes me up in the moment. I like to generally learn about what I'm talking about, have an idea, a baseline idea of it, have a few questions in mind floating around my head, and then I just like to go with the flow. So I
Very
can't think of a
spontaneous.
time of where I assumed the worst and it actually worked out. Oh, not when it comes to media or like the actual performance of my job, but when it comes to logistics. So there's been times where I'm like, okay, I have to be at the TV station at 4 p.m. What if there's traffic? It's supposed to take 30 minutes, but I'll go an hour in advance. Actually, you know what? Just in case, just so I'm there and I don't have to stress, I'll go 2 hours in advance, which is silly going 2 hours in advance, except on one occasion, it rained and it actually took me 2 hours to get there. So if I'd left any later, I wouldn't have made it on time. When it comes to flights as well, I'm like the dads. I get to the airport 3 hours early. I'm like that. When it comes to logistics, it's one thing. When it comes to me, I trust myself. I don't trust other people.
Yeah. Um, and you're right. I think a lot of people will find that during exams, when you're waiting for your results and you're like, oh my God, I failed. But then you actually end up doing better than you have. It's a really nice feeling. I used to be the kind of person who said, oh, I've done incredible. And going back to history, I think you can tell it's like it's like a love hate relationship with that subject. It was my first essay that I ever did. And we had like a time limit. I was like, oh my God, I think I'm getting like full marks. I don't know if you've seen that trend on TikTok. It's like, oh, how well do you think you've done? It's like 100 in the end of like getting like five. And I did. That was the one I failed, and I got four. And so this last one that we did, and I think it does work on how much I practiced, but it's fine. I said that, oh, I'm failing this one for sure. I got 8 out of 8. It was my first full marks in history. I feel really proud of that. So maybe in those cases as well, alongside logistics, that might be where you do want to assume the worst, but put in the work. Be prepared, as Farah said. Unless it doesn't work for you, unless it's that spontaneous thing. But I don't think you should try spontaneous stuff.
I don't think my advice works for academics. I think you need to know the material. I think you need to study. I think you need to be over prepared because some people think it's a waste. Like, oh, I studied way too much and the exam was easy. The information doesn't fall out of your head. You keep that information later. You get to have that, for free. Maybe it didn't help you with this exam, but it's in your head now. You can keep it.
Just drawing the lines there. All right, let's move on to a rapid fire round now. I've got 4 questions. I've got my timer right here. You have to answer this each question in under 60 seconds. All right. The first one is: what is your worst fear related to a live performance? Go.
If my parents come and watch it,
Oh, okay. Why?
I don't want them. I don't like it.
Okay. I think a lot of people will be able to relate with you. What is the craziest thing a listener has ever requested on the radio?
The craziest thing a listener has requested on the radio. I don't know if I can talk about this on your podcast, Ashina.
Say it and then I can edit it out. It's fine.
A lady came on the radio requesting a song for her boyfriend and her boyfriend's wife.
Oh my God, this can definitely go in. It is so juicy. All right. Number 3, go-to strategy for calming pre-show jitters.
Um, I do have a strategy. You go into a bathroom or just any private area that you can, and you push really, really hard against the wall.
Oh, how does
You
that
put all
feel?
your physical exertion to just pushing as if you're trying to move the wall, as if you're trying to knock it over, and that puts your brain, your body into a different zone, and you forget about the anxiety, the jitteriness.
Wow. And
Try
last
it.
one, I will do. What is the most rewarding part of your career?
Um, Meeting people. I get to meet really cool people. I got to meet someone like you, Ashna. I get to meet not just other fellow presenters, but like guests. Our producer, Ree Mulhooney, is a really inspirational woman. Got to meet people like her. And, I'll be honest, praise, validation is nice. It's very rewarding when people say you did such a good job, like makes you feel good inside. And of course, money.
Of course.
We're not out here doing this
Definitely.
for free.
Yeah, no, definitely not. So thank you so much, Ferris, for joining us. And you have been someone that I've looked up to. You know, you've got just some incredible vibes around you. So thank you so much for coming on to the show, being a part of the Triple XRS community, and sharing your incredible advice with all of us today. Some very useful stuff. Thank you very much. And I will say this again, I think you are the most relatable guest that we've had on so far. And no, this is not a lie, because I'm gonna publish this part of the episode as well. So you've got that superlative title for good. Thank you so much for coming on. And for all of you who chose to listen to our podcast or episode today, thank you so much for listening, for being a part of this community. And stay tuned until next time, sharing relatable stories for relatable students from relatable scenes with me, Ashna, and Ferris.
One.